order. And with that, we welcome Eric Cain, who covers the Tennessee Volunteers for On3, with maybe one of the best backdrops we've seen from any guest on this show. Eric, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Eric, let Tennessee fans know that they do have Tennessee baseball national champion logos to put on those Game Time Sidekicks cups, and that Code Stadium will save them money.
Yeah, out of Knoxville, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Game Time Sidekicks is.
That they do, man. National championship. Tennessee fans have been waiting on one for a long, long time. So they're going to be throwing that logo on pretty much anything they can find.
Maybe the last time for it in a while. So, Eric,
there he is. There he is.
Welcoming guest.
Welcome the guest with a backhand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Eric doesn't play for the team. So, Eric, give us Josh Heupel, electric offense. A lot of things changing at the quarterback room this year. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name right now, but Nico, the new quarterback, 5-star guy, had a great bowl game. A lot of folks on the Nico train, including your colleague, JD Pickell, who is maybe the conductor of that train right now. What can we expect out of Tennessee? I know high-powered offense, but what can we expect out of Tennessee this season?
Yeah, I think this is a team that's going to have a whole lot of excitement. I'm not predicting Tennessee's going to be back to leading the nation in total offense and total touchdowns and yards per game and all that like they were in 2022. But I do think this offense for Josh Heupel is going to more closely resemble that unit than the one you saw last year. I mean, last year, that's the first time in, I want to say 5 or 6 years that a Josh Heupel offense didn't finish ranked in the top 10. You still, scored 31, 32 points per game, but I think you're going to see more points. I think you're going to see more yards. And with Nico Iamaleava is how you say his name.
Of course.
Ability to throw off platform, ability to extend plays, ability to process information at a fast clip. And that's kind of what you want in this Josh Heupel offense. So I think it's going to be a team that's going to have an exciting offense. You got weapons on the outside. You got a veteran offensive line. You've got a tailback coming back that's seen plenty of action. You got a defense that has got a lot of experience and a deep rotation up front. It's a new look secondary, so that's a big question mark. But I think it's a team that's going to be, knocking on the door to the college football playoff. And we'll see, if Tennessee can win a big game against Oklahoma, Florida, at home against Alabama, and, of course, Georgia. How many of those games do they win, I think will tell the story of if Tennessee makes the playoff or not.
We've previewed the season a lot, and Nico's last name has put me in a typing blender. And I had to cover a guy named Daniel Imatorbhebhe, which I figured out right before he transferred.
You covered him for maybe 6 days.
Hey, as soon as I figured out how to spell Imatorbhebhe, he transferred, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
See, luckily for us, Tennessee's been recruiting him since like 2021, so it didn't take long for us to get the pronunciation and the name, and just from then on, it's just been repetition. So we're good now.
You're putting the reps in, but listen, for me, I will take typing out Mertz over Nico's last name.
I bet you would.
Let's talk a little bit about the offense. Brew McCoy, Chris Brazzell, and then Squirrel White. Squirrel White, that's a name that might be at the top of my list for names this year. What can we expect out of the wide receiver group? Is there any concerns about Nico? Talk to us just a little bit about the passing attack. Obviously, we know Josh Heupel's going to throw the ball a lot, but touch us a little bit. I know that there was some graduations and some early announcements to the NFL. So talk to us a little bit about the passing attack and some of these names.
Yeah, I mean, last year's group, of course, you lost Cedric Tillman, you lost Jalen Hyatt, who won the Biletnikoff Award, and those are two big losses, but you still brought back a lot, and that group really disappointed last year. And sure, Joe Milton is very much a part of that conversation, but it's not all Joe Milton. He didn't get a lot of help at points and times. And Squirrel White had his coming out party last year in the slot, and whoever plays in the slot in this offense is going to be a pretty good player. And he was a really, really good player. And of course, Brew McCoy had an early season-ending injury, and Tennessee was without kind of that security blanket for much of the year, and he's going to be coming back. And the big transfer portal acquisition last year was Dante Thornton from Oregon, and he's got great size, great speed. Coaches here at Tennessee were saying, hey, this dude's going to be in the NFL, and it did not work out last year. It started to when they bumped him out of the slot and put him on the outside, and he started to kind of round into form, had a couple good games. Then he got hurt and missed the last couple of games of the year. You add Chris Brazzell, who you mentioned from Tulane, who had a really, really solid year last year, but now he's stepping up in competition to the SEC, bringing a 5-star Mike Matthews. My point is Tennessee's returning a group and adding to a group that should be fairly explosive this year. And if you get a quarterback that can help them out a little bit, I think that offense, the passing offense, is going to be fun and exciting this year. Something I said a moment ago, and I'll just reiterate it. Joe Milton struggled when he was forced off platform. Joe Milton struggled when he was forced out of the pocket. Nico's not Michael Vick, but Nico can make plays on the run and throw out of the pocket and roll out and all that. And he can tuck in a run. You saw that in the bowl game as well. So I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of expectation for this offense, the passing offense, to, again, more vertical, less side to side, and kind of get back to what it was the last couple of years when it was really successful.
Yeah, we were very familiar with Joe Milton, for a kid that camped at Florida just down the road in Orlando. And Joe Milton was the reason I picked Florida to win last year. That's quite frankly, that's what it was. I think Nico fits into what Heupel does, and it's a quarterback friendly offense. Joe Milton just went to the Anthony Richardson School of Off-Season Hype, went to the Manning Academy, threw an orange 175 million yards, did a backflip, and then that's what gets the hype. But I think Nico is much better suited for what Heupel does. It will be interesting though, just getting that first experience. I know he played against Iowa in the bowl game, but getting that first experience playing at some of these venues and having to go through it. We talk a lot about Heupel and the offense. I think Florida and Tennessee, it's typically about who runs the ball, historically at least, who runs the ball better. What does the line of scrimmage on each side look like for Tennessee?
Yeah, up front on the offensive line for Tennessee, you're bringing back Cooper Mays, who's an all-SEC center. Bringing back John Campbell, who's been in college for about a decade. I think this is literally his 7th year over there at right tackle. Javonte Spraggins, who's going to be a 4-year starter at right guard. Lance Hurd, you're adding him from LSU. Of course, didn't start last year. 2 NFL guys who are still at LSU playing tackle right now, kind of forced him to the bench, but really, really high upside there. There's a question mark at left guard right now, but you got a lot of veterans who have played that are kind of trying to battle that out there at left guard. So the offensive line you feel good about. I mean, I think in the era of the transfer portal, like Lance Hurd's a perfect example. Really, really good guys oftentimes aren't sticking around to wait their opportunity. They're wanting to go seek other opportunities, like Lance Hurd at Tennessee. So sure, tackle depth's a little bit of an issue, but overall I think this offensive line for Tennessee is viewed as one of the better ones coming into the season in the SEC. Running back, man, Dylan Sampson, again, he was kind of the third head to that 3-headed monster with Jalen Wright and Jabari Small the last couple of years, but he'd seen plenty of action. He took over the fourth quarter of a game at Kentucky last year and won Tennessee that game on the road. That was a really, really good game for him. He scored 4 touchdowns against Virginia in the season opener last year. Dude's good. And, Cam Seldon, who's going to kind of be his 1B to the 2-headed monster there in the backfield, is a bigger guy, about 6'1", 6'2", 225 pounds, but runs about as well as anybody on the team. So a lot of inexperience behind Dylan Sampson, but a lot of excitement there as well. And so in the trenches, you ask, that's offensive side running the football. Defensively, man, Rodney Garner, obviously SEC veteran, coach. He's going to play, I kid you not, 14 guys up front. There's going to be a rotation there. He's going to play 14 guys. James Pierce is going to get, 30 or, whatever snaps, 35, 40 snaps a game. He's going to get his due, don't worry. But there's a lot of guys who are going to play, a lot of guys who have played, a lot of experience coming back, a lot of production. Amari Thomas, Omar Norman-Lott, 5.5 sacks from the interior of the defensive line last year. He's coming back. Elijah Simmons, who's been there forever. Bryson Eason, who's been there forever. It's going to be a really, really good group up front that was so good at defending the run last year, and we'll see if they can I think they had a near 100 TFLs last year. They had over 100 TFLs 2 years ago. And, again, this is minus Tyler Barron. This is pretty much the same group coming back for 2024.
What do you rank Tennessee in the SEC right now?
So, obviously because of the SEC Media Days, the predicted order of finish, everybody's been talking about this. I think, Georgia and Texas are up there. I think Alabama's the clear number 3, but kind of a tier down. And then from there, you can kind of mix and match a group of 5. Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee, LSU. I would have Tennessee probably 6th I would have Missouri in front of Tennessee because I understand what they're returning and got that 1-2 combo punch of Brady Cook and Luther Burden, coming off a double-digit win season last year. I get the Missouri hype this offseason, and seeing that schedule, it's easy to see why. I would have Tennessee probably behind Missouri at number 6 out of the 16 teams. I would have LSU behind that group. I would have LSU behind Tennessee, and then I have Oklahoma there at, I guess, number 8. So I'd have Tennessee at number 6.
We didn't mention Florida in there.
Don't like
Florida
that.
would be back there. Others
receiving votes.
Yeah. No,
I mean, six in the SEC, also a playoff team. I was just trying to gauge like the expectations. I know it's high in Tennessee. I do like Nico a lot. I do want to see from a leadership standpoint his intangibles, how it plays out now that he's in, because that just matters so much in college football. Just having the skills sometimes. You need quarterbacks with some intangibles to get you in those playoffs. But just want to see where you rank them with the playoff expectations. How do they rank in the SEC? That's all.
And that's, you brought up a good point about Nico right there, and like I think that's something that he's been trying to learn. Obviously, young guys to not just be a leader of the huddle, not just to be a leader of the offense, but now, hey, you're the quarterback at the University of Tennessee. You're a leader of the football team. This is your team, and so communicating with his offensive lineman, talking to his receivers in between plays, kind of breaking down the team huddles and everything. He's been taking some strides, over the course of spring and summer, but he's a quiet guy. I mean, that's not necessarily his personality,
right.
But I'm with you, man.
Right.
I'm intrigued to see how he kind of commands this team because it is his team.
Yeah. Well, you get the Duke's Mayo Bowl Classic as like a first away game, kind of. Well, it's in Charlotte versus NC State.
No, I mean Mayo is just the most disgusting thing in the world. Sorry.
Whoa.
Didn't we have their social media manager on?
Yeah. I beefed with the Duke's Mayo social media guy years ago.
No. You lost. Yeah. You lost.
Mayo's a solid condiment, man. Don't do that. Like, you can't make coleslaw without it. You can't make tuna fish without it.
So you're fine with getting a bucket of mayo dumped on your head?
No.
There's levels and lines.
No. I just like a good coleslaw, man.
You get a sort of a road test. I'm guessing NC State will travel well to that. It's not very far for them. And then that first big road test in Oklahoma. How much do you think you just learn about Nico handling that environment? It'll be their first SEC game. They'll be pumped up for that.
Yeah, I think that's the tone setter for this team. On my Locked On Balls podcast coming out tomorrow morning, I kind of lead off with that most important, biggest game conversation because it's been talked a lot about on our board over at VolQuest over the last week. NC State is, I don't think anybody's, from the fan base perspective, I don't think fans are necessarily like overlooking NC State, but I do think that everybody's kind of penciled in a win there for Tennessee, and Tennessee should be favored in that game. I'm going to pick Tennessee to win that game, but it's definitely a challenge. It's neutral site, but it's definitely a challenge. The way NC State finished last year, upgraded its roster, got a better quarterback in Grayson McCall. I think that's going to be a really, really good game there in week 2. But then the Oklahoma game you mentioned 2 weeks later, that's the first true road game for Tennessee this year. That's the first true road game for Nico Iamaleava in his career. Last year's Citrus Bowl, obviously neutral site. So I'm intrigued to see how he can handle all that. Of course, you're going to have all the national attentions with Heupel going back to Oklahoma. 2 teams that I think are very similar, Tennessee and Oklahoma, with the way their rosters are right now and 2 young quarterbacks. But I think that's one of those games to where if you win it on the road, you can, not that you're trying to, but you can afford another slip up on that schedule outside of Georgia and still be sitting pretty good for the college football playoff. Third Saturday in October is at Neyland Stadium. That's going to be a huge game, obviously, with Alabama. Florida is going to be at Neyland Stadium. That's always a big game. But if you win that game against Oklahoma, you're sitting pretty. If you drop that game, man, like you better beat Florida. You better beat Alabama because I'm not sure of what team's going to go on the road and beat Georgia. Not many teams in the country can do that.
That's a tough 4-week stretch. I don't think Arkansas is very good, but that's a tough 4-week stretch.
And then Kentucky's right after. Kentucky's right after. So.
5-game stretch. Yeah. Is that weird to have Florida right before the third Saturday in October, right before Alabama? Like, you don't get a bye week or anything like that. Like, Florida might not be at the caliber of Alabama right now, but that's a rivalry game. It's heated to have those 2 games back to back.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's weird to not play Florida in the month of September.
Yeah.
It's always one of the first couple of games of the year, first couple of SEC games of the year, obviously, in the month of September. It's always hot, humid, especially when it's in Gainesville. And yeah, it's gonna from like an emotional standpoint, rivalry standpoint. I mean, all these games are tough, obviously, but I mean, those are two big ones, and to get up and play those back to back, and then you're right. I mean, you got Kentucky after that as well, which is a game that means a lot to Tennessee fans, and that's it's very much like Florida and Tennessee's history, where it's like it doesn't matter the season, like Florida just finds a way to beat Tennessee every single year. Sure. It's how Tennessee and Kentucky are. A lot of those games are not ever easy though, so. A pretty tough stretch right there for sure. With Florida and Alabama and Kentucky, and then of course you got Georgia a couple of weeks later. So it's a little weird, but it's an SEC schedule, so nothing's going to be too easy.
Tennessee right now, bet online 8.5 wins. They're one of, I believe I counted 9. It was either 8 or 9 teams that have 8.5 wins or above projected in the SEC this year, which is just absolutely bonkers. You think Tennessee's above or below 8.5?
Yeah, I like the over. I do.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm pretty real, pretty center when it comes to making these top of
not like the last guy we just had on. Jeez Louise.
I'm not sure many teams in the country can go on the road and beat Georgia. So say that's a loss. Between Florida, the third Saturday in October, on the road at Oklahoma, there can be a loss in there. And again, if there's one loss in that stretch, I mean, you're sitting 10-2 if you take care of business the rest of the way. I mean, you're a playoff team. So, I like the over for sure for Tennessee. Worst case scenario, I never want to say worst case scenario, but I mean, you drop 3 games, obviously you're still hitting that over. So I like the over for Tennessee for sure.
Yeah, I just hope I looked at the schedule. I mean, no offense, out of conference schedule is pretty easy. Outside of that NC State game is really the only notable one. I think they've got Chattanooga, UTEP, they've got Vanderbilt on there. I think it's tough for me to see, no matter what happens against the game against Florida, Tennessee losing more than 4 games, unless like you said, the wheels fall off. There's massive injuries, but that's obviously never worked.
You forgot to say it like Dan Mullen. UT Chattanooga.
Yeah, hey, just go by Chattanooga, Nick. Just go by Chattanooga now. Just like Louisiana. Okay. Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana.
Better question. Under for Florida at 4.5 from the men and women that build palaces in the desert.
I mean, I think Florida's going to be better than what a lot of people are saying. I mean, I understand this schedule is brutal. I mean, I don't have the schedule pulled up in front of me right now, but I mean, that 5-game stretch to end the season, and like that's before you get to Tennessee, and I mean, but Florida's got athletes. Florida's always got athletes on that roster. It's hard for me not to see Florida finding a way to win 5 games this year. So I would take the over.
Yeah. I hope so. Speak it into existence, my friend. The last guy we had on the show thought that Gus Malzahn was going to be the reason that Billy Napier got fired. So,
I mean, listen, he could be. If Florida loses to Miami and UCF, then UCF could. Missouri's not on the schedule. Typically, since I've been here, that's where coaches go to get fired. Missouri's not on the schedule. Maybe UCF is taking their place.
Yeah.
What does Billy have to do this year to keep his job?
I don't think that there's a black and white number ultimatum. Let's say you go 7-5, but your 5 losses are blowouts to Tennessee, Florida State, Miami, Georgia, Texas, and it looks bad and it looks the same as it has, versus 6-6, and you're competing in Jacksonville, competing in Austin, maybe beat Florida State on the road or beat a Tennessee on the road. So there's a situation or a scenario where 6-6, you could feel better about it than 7-5. Based on what the losses and the wins look like.
My thing is usually what's that, Dan?
No, go ahead. I said that was tough for me to agree with.
Right. Usually in football, you lose close and then next year you're supposed to win, right? That's usually okay, these guys lost a lot of close games. I don't expect us to get blown out in any game, right? So I don't think
they've lost by 20 in Jacksonville each of the last 2 years.
Oh, well, Georgia's a different monster. You just take them out of the equation. I think Texas could be a blowout. Texas and Georgia could both of those could be blowouts by 20 points, that type of game. But everybody else, I expect us to be, in position to win those games in the fourth quarter. So to me, it's a test of, are we getting over that hump? You lose a lot of close games. That next year, if those close games are still close games and you're losing to your rivals, I know DJ Lagway sitting in the grassy knoll waiting to take over and do his thing is one that could hold, the decision makers from pulling the trigger. No pun intended. I don't know how I got to all of that, brother. But
just 10
these times,
after,
in these times,
this is crazy. I did not play any of this. This is crazy, man. Anywho, but I think it's just tricky because of Lagway. But I think what we're all watching is do we get over that hump of decision making, the sending players out, the mistakes, the close games. It's getting over the hump, and I think we just got to see that, engage it from there. But I don't expect us to get blown out in 4 or 5 games or anything crazy like that.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, give my opinion on this, I think it matters how they lose, right? So I kind of said I didn't agree with Nick, but I think at the end of the day, like Florida has to win football games, right? Like I think the days of just saying, hey, we went 6-6, but we won some good games, we were close in the other ones. I think that's going to be tough to grapple with going into next season where you literally play the exact same schedule, just reversed, right? So I think you want to see some drastic improvement, and Florida has to win some of those games this season that they're not favored to win in, right? And right now the Gators are 4.5, 5.5, depending on where you look, over under on win total. You have to steal a few others. You have to look good doing it. And you can't make, like Corey was saying, you can't make the same organizational errors that you've kept making, because even if you go 7-5 but it looks like crap, I still don't know if that's good enough. I think Florida, you have to win at Florida, right? That's the expectation. The seat, if he doesn't get fired, the seat will be so hot that I just don't even know how you get the recruiting class you want.
Yeah, how do you recruit after that? Yeah, I mean,
right. Well, they're not right now, so.
All right, Nick. Eric. Eric,
go join the Sons of UCF podcast.
Anything less than 8-4, and he will still have a sub 500 record going into year 4.
Yeah, but he just went 8-4, so we don't like to look too far in the past, Nick.
I'll take 8 wins, man. It depends. We got to beat our rivals, though. That's just
if Florida goes 8-4
again. It's just certain games we got to win.
Florida goes 8-4. I'm going full FSU writer and saying that ESPN is conspiring to keep Florida out of the playoff.
That's too much. You just too much, man.
I'm going
dragging
full
it, bro.
Mike Rowe, dirty jobs. I will be banging that drum.
Hey, Eric, how long do you think a coach should get these days with the transfer portal, different times? Like, what do you think? How long the league should be at the average SEC program?
Man, I think you got a pretty good idea how that year 2 is, right? Like, I'm not saying you're going to be fired. You should be fired after year 2 or whatever, but depending on what that year 2 is, boy, I think you got a really good indication of kind of the direction you're going. I think 3 years is kind of the model we're following right now for most cases is 3 years, and then after that, it's kind of like, well, is he going to keep his job? Is he not? And you fire, go in the different direction, but. With the transfer portal, the ability to upgrade your roster, to plug holes, to go and find a quarterback. I mean, look at Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee in 2021 won 7 games, and I mean that roster was not good. But hey, you got a quarterback in Hendon Hooker that could play, and look at that offense go, man. I mean, sometimes it just takes one game-changing type player at the quarterback position. So, with the transfer portal, I think it's a little bit of a shorter leash than what it was, but I still think about 3 years.
Yeah,
same.
Well, man, Eric, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Hopefully, we can get you back on before week 6 when the Gators take on, or the Gators game 6, week 7, I believe. When we get into it. But Eric, from VolQuest, let everybody know where they can follow you on social media, man. And really had an enjoyable conversation with you today.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on, and I'll obviously come back and talk Tennessee football whenever. You guys can follow me at _Cainer on Twitter for everything you want to know about Tennessee football. I know the fan base right now is just hitting that follow button. They want to get those Tennessee updates, right?
Yeah, I don't know that you want Florida fans to follow you on Twitter.
No.
Well, Tennessee fans love you, Nick. So
I love our rivals
like him.
Love hate relationship with Tennessee fans.
All good.
Awesome. Eric, we appreciate you coming on, my friend. We will see you in